Hello and welcome. Let us dive into the toolbox and look at tool number 2, which is the Goblins worksheet. This one is a little bit on the long side, so I've divided it into 2 parts. This is all about planning and prepping your negotiating agenda using the Goblins worksheet. Okay, so Goblins comes from, it's just an acronym. At the top, you've got goals, objectives, and best alternatives. And this is how we're going to talk about the strategic part of the negotiating process. When we get to the tactical section, we're looking at the specific things you would like to get, your intermediate or most likely scenario, and what you need or there will be no deal. And style is what wraps up all your tactics and behaviors. So there is the planning worksheet that we're going to use to come up with our goals, our bottom line, and our tactics. So let's take a quick look at what we mean when we talk about strategy and what we mean when we talk about tactics. Strategy is where we set goals, and we also define our bottom line. The way we are doing negotiation, the way we are doing this cross-culture negotiation, building bridges is going to be a strategic decision. We're not going to decide at the negotiating table that the other side is an okay set of blokes and it's okay to have a relationship with them. No, you're going to decide that in advance, and then you're going to be strategic about building bridges. Or you're going to be focused on having a lot of counterparties so you can get the most value you can out of this transaction. And if you never see the other person again, so be it. On the tactical side, we're looking at methods. We're looking at how to reach those goals. And here we're focusing on the interaction. When we are speaking to the other person, writing to them, conferencing with them, or deciding not to speak to them, we are using tactics. It's a method. So we're going to look at the tactics used to maximize the benefit of a relationship and the tactics used to maximize the benefit of the transaction. So let's start by looking at strategy. And there we have the ambitious goal that is going to describe where the organization is going to be in 5 years. Then at the bottom, we have best alternative, which is what our condition is, what our situation is, if there is no deal. So let's start by looking at goals. We use the SMART framework: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timed. We'll go into more detail in this a couple of videos from now, but the ones we care about are the measurable and the timed in this case. So we're going to our job is to end up with a matrix that includes real values, real measurements of the things that we want and what we're willing to give up. When you are writing out your goal, I want you to be descriptive and qualitative. I want you to describe where your organization is going to be in 5 or 10 years. And the example I use a lot is, let's say a multinational wants to establish a presence in another country. Let's talk about China. I don't know if that's so feasible, but the example I used was a multinational based in Europe wants to set up in China. That is our overall goal. So in 5 years, they want 30% of their output and 35% of their market penetration or the market contribution, and 28% of their expenses to come from Asia. And the regional headquarters is going to be this new branch in Shanghai. So that is our strategic goal in slightly more than 5 words. And then we're going to decide for the person sitting across from us, what do we want from them? Do we want a strategic relationship based on our goal? Do we want a strategic relationship, a one-off transaction, or something in the middle? Spoiler alert, there's not much in the middle. Once we have our goal set up, our overall strategic goal, now I want to talk about the objective of this negotiation. What do I want from the person across the table from me? What do I hope to walk away with? I'm taking the part of that overall strategic goal that I want the person across the table to deliver and provide to me. and what I have to do in order to get that. So I am going to be negotiating for one of three broad areas. I want money, I want stuff, or I want services. Money is from the seller, or if he's the buyer. Services, I'm a purchaser of services, just like you would be of raw materials or of finished goods. But with services, you're probably going to want some kind of relationship. Whereas if you're buying finished goods, if you're buying a car, you don't really necessarily need a relationship. So that's where we are now. I want you to take the part of the goal that the person across the table can provide, and I want you to make a list of the things you care about. So you're talking about what he's providing and what the conditions are that you want to put on it. This becomes your variables. Variables at the beginning, at this stage, is like a shopping list. This is just the stuff you want from this counterparty. On the second thing to look for here is, how do your organizations fit together? If this is going to be, especially if this is going to be a relationship, or if it's going to be you're procuring or delivering services, you probably want to qualify the other party to make sure that they are the right kind of person for you. And the strategic goal and the variables were the top of the range. They're the distant goal. The bottom line, the best alternative to no agreement, the plan B, is the other extreme. This is the worst case scenario. This is what happens when we get a no from our counterparty. So there is the strategic gap that we're looking at in the top half of this worksheet. Over here, off in the distance, is the goal that we've decided we want our company to hit. And here is the best alternative. This is what we have if we cannot get across this gap. This is what we have if there's no deal. And this is the variables that they are putting in place in order to build that bridge that's going to take us from best alternative to goal. Okay, plan BATNA is best alternative, but don't let that fool you. It's not best. It's the least worst. It's what happens if there is the condition you're in, the situation you find yourself in. It's what happens if there's no deal, because you say no, because he says no, or because there's a pandemic that shuts down business across 3 continents. So plan A is in the trash. Now you've got plan B. B for BATNA, for best alternative, for bad news, for bottom line. Okay? And you want to stay away from BATNA. And in the next video, we're going to look at the tactics you use to stay as far from your BATNA as possible.